my channel, or if you're new here, welcome for the very first time. My name is Heather, and today we are going to talk about everything I read in October and November. All in all, I read like 12 or 13 books, and I read everything from fantasy to sci-fi to romance to horror. We're gonna go across quite a large spectrum here. Get cozy. Ellie is already cozy. That's the vibe we're channeling here today. This way. Not Remus's vibe. That's not the vibe. So get a drink, get cozy, and let's yap about some books. I started off October with Katabasis by RF Kuang. This book is about a graduate student named Alice Law who studies magic, and her professor dies mysteriously, and she goes to hell to retrieve his soul, basically. And her arch rival academic nemesis ends up going along with her. And it's about the two of them kind of adventuring through hell to find their professor and also get back home. I genuinely thought that I was going to love this book. I love R.F. Kuang. She's one of my favorite authors. Babel is like one of my favorite books ever that I've ever read. And this just, I don't know. I continue to be left with, I don't know how I feel about it. I like the writing style. I liked the general plot. I couldn't really connect with the characters, I don't think. I feel like, really, I just left this feeling like I needed to read it again to know how I felt about it. So it's not that I didn't enjoy it. I thought that it was like an enjoyable read. I had a good time with it. I don't know. There was something I just can't quite put my finger on about it that didn't quite hit like the rest of her books that I've read. I do think that this pair of characters, like the main characters, are just extremely annoying. Especially like I feel very like I could relate to Alice, but also not at all. If my professor died mysteriously, I would be like, cool. Let me argue with the dean about why I get an A in that class because no one can grade it. And I would not spend half of my lifespan to go to hell to rescue him. So I think just the concept was a little bit unavailable for me to like relate to. I will say that I do think I started off this book really feeling like this book was like written for me. I have a math degree. Yes, I am bragging a little bit, but I like have a math degree, and the way she used geometry in this book was very, very, very cool. I did like that so much. That just brought like this sense of kind of joy and warmth to my soul that probably not everybody would experience. But for me personally, especially in the very beginning when she was talking about paradoxes and how the magic system works, it was just like lighting up my brain. But yeah, I think if you like R.F. Kuang, you will like this book. I think if you don't like R.F. Kuang, or if you've read some of her books and maybe been a little bit unsure, probably not the one to start with. Next up, we have Sky Full of Elephants by Cebo Campbell. I don't have this book physically with me right now because I've lent it out literally as soon as I got it. I think that everyone should read this book, just hands down. I'm not going to go at length about this one because there's already a bunch of videos on my channel explaining it. There's some shorts, there's longer YouTube videos. It's so good, so I talked about it a lot. If you've never seen one of my videos before, A Sky Full of Elephants is a speculative fiction book. It follows Charlie Brunton. I think Brunton's his last name. We're just going to go with the follows Charlie. I get points for remembering his first name. It's fine if I forget his last name. But it follows our main character, Charlie, in a post-racial society. And what I mean by that is the premise is that there was an event where one day all white people just walked into the nearest body of water. And yeah. And it sounds very intense and like it is inherently anti-white, and that's not really what this book is about. In this post-racial world, Charlie is free from prison for the very first time when he was like falsely incarcerated for 20 years. And he gets a call from the daughter that he's never known, who has grown up with her all-white family. And basically she asks him to come get her and drive her down to Alabama because she's heard that there's a colony of white people there. And they travel across, again, what is now post-racial America and what that would look like for them to move through a world where whiteness didn't exist. And it's more a commentary on the value of Black culture and Black people and being able to move freely in the world than it is about not white people. And I know that that might sound a little bit out there, but it was just one of the books that made me so appreciate what fiction can do, because never in my life would I be able to sit inside the brain of a middle-aged Black man and a young Black woman and hear their experiences in that way. It just, for me, this book really just like highlights the best of like what speculative fiction can be where it grapples with these big like what if questions, and what fiction can be for us when we get to really experience somebody else's perspective that we've never ever had before. So that was like a 100 out of 5 for me. I think that it should legitimately be required readings. It changed my brain chemistry and how I move and think about the world, or how I move through and think about the world. Now we're going to venture into a thriller with Boomtown by Nick Stone. This is her debut adult novel. She has written children's novels up until this point. And this is about a club in Atlanta called Boomtown, where a girl mysteriously goes missing, and it reminds the manager Micah of an experience a few years ago where another girl went missing kind of in the same way. And so Micah, aka Lyric, has to basically figure out on her own what happened to both of them. So first of all, I read this on a plane, and I don't think that there's a better experience than reading a thriller on a plane. Like, it is my ideal plane book. I don't know if there's something about like the stress of flying and being able to like channel that into a book of like just that fast pace. I need to know what happens. But I finished this in a flight. So I did like it. I will say the only thing that I didn't like about it is it was difficult to keep track of all the characters. There's 2 timelines. We do a lot of flashbacks, and they have their regular like given name and their dancer name, and they flip between them a lot. And so I found myself having to like flip back a lot to remember who exactly we were talking about. It's not impossible. It's just a little bit confusing. That said, like the pacing was good. It was pretty fast to get through. I did think that the story was pretty good. I'm definitely looking forward to more books by Nick Stone. We are going to delve into some horror with You Weren't Meant to Be Human by Andrew Joseph White. This book is about a man, Crane, who finds himself basically in a cult that's run by a hive of worms, hence the worms on the cover. And he finds himself to be pregnant. I'm going to read you the first sentence of this book because I just think that it is one of the best like first sentences ever. But Crane doesn't know this yet. But he's been pregnant for almost 3 months already. Just the amount of implication that sentence has and sets the tone for like what this book is going to be. You have a male who's pregnant who doesn't know, like, crazy start. So we follow Crane, who is a trans autistic mute man who's living with this cult and has has become pregnant, and we follow him through all of the rest of his pregnancy. This book really grapples with like, what does pregnancy look like for the trans community, for people in general in a post-Roe world. So I will say, if you are a fan of horror, you will probably like this. I'm not sure that like is the right word, but I would advise everyone very strongly to check your trigger warnings before getting into this book. There is a list of them in the beginning. The author has a website listing them out. It's not a book where I would gloss over those. Sometimes, especially if you're like sometimes they don't seem that serious. For this book, especially given the topics that it's covering, be very careful and be very aware of the scenes that it's going to get into, because the theme is about the like violence of pregnancy, really. And I don't want to give too much away about it, because I think you should really go into it as blind as possible. But I just do think that it's an exceptional example of body horror and horror as a genre to like make a point. I think a lot of times that we see like extreme body horror or gore, it's kind of used in this over the top way and not necessarily always making a point. Whereas with this book, I do think that the author did a phenomenal job using body horror in a way to make an extreme message about an extreme point. The risks of living in a post-Roe world, like for people, is violent and can be terrifying and can be very hard on your body, and can push people to do very extreme things. And this does not shy away from saying that at all. So just keep in mind, again, trigger warnings. I do think that if you like horror as a genre, if you appreciate horror as a genre, you will absolutely appreciate how this book is written for the message that it is. That last book, I obviously needed something warm and cozy. So I kicked off my reread of The Lord of the Rings by reading The Hobbit. I don't have it in front of me. I am actually not sure where it is at this exact moment. It's somewhere on my shelves that are in desperate need of organization. So if you don't know or have somehow lived under a rock for the last 60 years, The Hobbit is about Bilbo Baggins, who is a hobbit, who gets convinced by Gandalf the Wizard and 13 dwarves to go on an adventure, to go steal some treasure. And it is technically a children's book, and we follow them on their adventure to the Misty Mountain. And it was just so lovely. I've read The Hobbit 100 times. So many. I've watched the animated movies 100 times, which are the superior film adaptation, by the way. I do have very strong opinions on that. I have seen the most recent obviously seen the more recent ones as well, but I just love this story so much, and it was so much fun to just have this cozy little read and kick off a reread that I'm doing November, December, and January with a couple of my mutuals over on Instagram. We've been doing a buddy read and fable, and it's been so fun because they're new people that I have met through doing this. And to be in this space where, I don't know, really starting to build community and make book friends, new friends through this series that I have loved for so long has been just a phenomenal experience. So if you've never read The Hobbit and you've seen the movies, if you love the Lord of the Rings movies and have never read the books, I highly suggest them. It is just the perfect cozy afternoon read. Get a cup of tea, sit on your couch, put on some cozy music, and hopefully it's raining outside, and read The Hobbit, because it'll make your whole day better. we are moving on to romance. Well, fantasy romance, kind of, with Which You Would by Leah Amador. I picked this up through one of my Aardvark box subscriptions because it looked, I mean, look at this. It looks adorable. And the premise seemed very adorable. It is about our main character, Penelope, who works as a magic assistant in a potion shop. And she kind of doing the retail grind. If you've been there, you understand what that means. Just really dislikes her job, her boss. So she applies to go on this reality TV show where basically these big like YouTube and I mean the equivalent of YouTube and celebrity potions and magic masters get paired up with a regular person and they compete for the top prize of like $100,000. It's basically Great British Bake Off mixed with like, I don't know, celebrity chopped teams. Like that's kind of what it is. And then she at the same time, and it's going to get a little confusing as I explain what this book is, and you'll understand why in a second. But at the same time, she has been talking to a man named Gil. He's been her pen pal. They've been talking about potions. Gil runs this little blog, and he's very into helping people. Who she gets cast with on the show is Leandro, who's the complete opposite of Gil. He is boisterous and out there and just doesn't seem to care about magic, which is her real true passion in life. And it turns out that Leandro and Gil are the same people. And that's not a spoiler. That's on the back cover of the book. And of course, as with any romance, they fall in love and, we follow them in their relationship journey as we go. Now, in that very short, like 2-second recap of this book, we already have fake identity. We have forced proximity. Then, on top of that, the producers want them to fake date. So we've got forced dating. There is, like, obviously they're the complete opposites. We have super serious girl and super out there boy who's irresponsible. There's the identity situation. There's just so many tropes cram-packed into this book that it was so impossible to enjoy. Like you didn't know what story, and you could tell that it was confusing because there is a page I think it's in like quite towards the beginning where she's talking to Leandro, who has only told a few people that he is Leandro. And she refers to him as Gil, even though it hasn't been revealed yet in the book that, like, to her, that they are the same person. So that just immediately, like, takes you right out of it. My other complaint about this book is that the writing was so modern. Like, it was very hard to gauge how old the characters were in this book. It almost feels like it was written young adult, and then they added ages so that it would be adult. Because they mentioned like 3 or 4 times, like, oh, we're 28 years old, we're 28. But then they were like saying things like, stuff gets yeeted into the sun, and like literally the word yeeted is in this book as a thing a 28-year-old would say. And either the author has just never met a 28-year-old and like assumes that 28-year-olds are speaking like 12-year-olds, or this was written as a young adult and they decided to up the age so that it would be more relevant to an adult audience. My least favorite book of the month. I do think its redeeming quality was that it still does make you kind of kick your feet and like be all giddy. If you want a cute, magic-y romance and can look past or just go into it knowing to expect those things, you might really enjoy it. But it was not for me. The other thing I will say, sorry, I keep ending and then starting again because I don't know, I've got more things to say about it. But the other thing I will say that is pro this book and why I really wanted to love it is because the representation in this book is phenomenal. Like there is every kind of human in this book. And I hate to hate on it so much when there was really good representation. I don't want to like take away from that. I just wish that it had been it needed to be edited one more time, like one more just edit to kind of make those like final cuts and really identify like who the target audience of this book was. I think that's really all it needed. Next up is another romance, Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. This follows Yasmin and Josiah as they are in their post-divorce co-parenting relationship. And we follow them as they kind of find their way back to each other. It's a second chance romance, kind of friends to lovers because they already, like, they have a very good co-parenting relationship. And I just absolutely adored this book so much. Kennedy Ryan is the romance queen, in my opinion. Like, she is just the best of the best. I absolutely fell in love with every character in this book. You're somehow rooting for every single person, like even the ones that like the main characters eventually date other people, and you're even like you're rooting for the people they end up dating, even though you want the two main characters to get back together. It was wild. I just felt so many things during this book. The amount of emotional depth and character was just, it was so good. It was such a refreshing like switch up from the romance that I had read previously to this one, just because I feel like sometimes when we get these really trope heavy, not super well edited romances, it like takes away from the genre as a whole. And with somebody like Kennedy Ryan, she does such an amazing job letting romance be what it is. Like, romance is a part of our everyday lives. It is the stories of relationships that we're all living in every single day. And to let those things kind of boil down to like our tropes is just so cheap almost, that reading something like Kennedy Ryan, where she really gives all of the relationship and character depth like so much time of day in a way that's enjoyable to read but also super sad, it was just really refreshing. I did sobbed. I will also say that if you have experienced pregnancy loss or anything related to that, I would just kind of maybe check your trigger warnings before going into it. It does heavily deal with pregnancy loss as a topic. And so if that's something that you have dealt with, like, definitely just make sure you check in with yourself before you get into it, because again, that like emotional depth is really there. They really do just kind of cover the whole thing, which is what brought like such richness to the story and such like this heartwarming, beautiful thing when they came back together, because it was just such a story of like two people really healing over their trauma and having to separate to learn how to be themselves again, and then so that they could come back together and be this happy, healthy couple. It was so good. I could talk for like 72 years about that book specifically. I think that everyone should read Kennedy Ryan. Whether you're a romance fan or not, you should just read Kennedy Ryan. I think we should just take a quick break to recognize our sponsor, Ellie, because she is doing such a good job being cute over there. She's really just adding something, bringing this video to a whole other level. with her adorableness. She's not moved in the hour plus I've been recording here. She's just chilling. Look at that eye, just barely opening. All right, go return to your regular scheduled programming now. All right, so we took a cozy little break with some romances, and now we're back into Horrorland with Lucky Day by Chuck Tingle. I love Chuck Tingle. Again, if you've watched any of my content to this point, you already know that I have loved every single book of his that I've read. There are multiple videos on my channel about him. There's also some content on the blog with in-depth reviews of his books, including this one, by the way, if you're looking to read some more about this book that I don't cover in this video, head to the blog and read all about it. There I go into much more detail about characters and more deep analysis of the book and the writing and all of that. So if you want to hear even more of my thoughts, if this 45 minutes or however long this video is going to be is not enough for you, there's links in the bio where you can hear even more written thought. So this book starts out with the lucky day, which they refer to in the book as the low probability event, which is a day where everybody, like a third of the population, dies in the most imaginative, fantastical ways you can even imagine. They like manhole covers come down on people. One person gets beat to death by a monkey wielding a typewriter. Just every possible insane scenario is how all of these people die. And Vera is a statistics professor who was publishing a book that day. And after the events unfold, she kind of goes into hiding. Essentially, like if there's nothing that's predictable and there's nothing that's measurable, and then her life like doesn't make sense as what she's like put into all of her life's work. So she goes into this like deep depression, and a year later an FBI, well, not FBI, but a agent for the group the government puts together, an agent for that group comes to her home and is like, hey, we need your help because that thing that you were about to publish a paper on the day the low probability event happened, actually we need to investigate that group and we need your help on that. And the rest of the book is her and her merry partner figuring out exactly what happened, why it happened, how it happened, and what's going on. I absolutely loved it. It's super short. It was very fast to get through. I love, like, Tingle's books are usually very quick. Like, he gets to the point pretty immediately. So I love that. The pacing was like near perfect. I kind of hated the main character. I still enjoyed the book regardless of that. But sometimes it just felt a little bit trope heavy to me, like the perfectionist statistics professor. Like, I don't know, maybe it's just because like I took that a little bit personally. As somebody who has a math degree, that's the second time I've mentioned that in this video. I'm not bragging. I promise it's relevant this time. But as someone who is like a math nerd, I hate that like all female math nerds are like put in this like perfectionist bucket, because that is so opposite of who I am. I am not an organized person. I am not like super clean and like everything has to be where it is, and just that like I don't know. I hate that kind of like oversimplification. It does work for the book. Like, it works for the book, though, so I'm not going to hold against it too much. And Chuck Tingle can just do no wrong in my eyes. It was an absolutely outlandishly fun time. It's so silly, but, like, such a good concept. And like all of his books, it's so tied to... I shouldn't say all of his books. His most recent traditionally published books. If you are a part of the Tingleverse, you understand why I had to give that caveat. But his most recently traditionally published books have all had an underlying theme of capitalism is bad. And capitalism and AI and capitalism and extreme technologies don't mix, and there's a lot of risk. And this book definitely follows that same theme. I will just forever read everything that he writes. He is an auto-buy author for me. This was the same experience. I loved it. I think that if you are already a Tingle fan, or if you like horror, kind of like You Weren't Meant to Be Human with Andrew Joseph White, where that was like such a good use of body horror, this is such a good use of splatter. Like, if you like splatter horror, but like want there to be an actual point behind it, this is a great book for you. So after reading the Everybody Dies, I needed something light again. So we're headed back into fantasy, and I reread The Lord of the Rings. So this was my November reread of Lord of the Rings, the kickoff to what we have dubbed the Fellowship of the Buddies. In our buddy read of the Lord of the Rings series, we're actually starting Two Towers as I record this. Again, similar to like what I said about The Hobbit, I just love this series so much. Like full confession, I, as a child, used to have a binder of copious notes that was the detailed differences between the books and the movies. And every time I watched the movies, I would rewrite them. Can someone please ask my parents how it took them 28 years to realize that I had any sort of neurodivergence? Because it feels like that was a sign. Anyways, I love them. That's really the main point of what I'm trying to say, is I absolutely adore these books so much. They hold such a special place in my heart. Like this was, for me, very much the series that I like escaped into as a child. I have read The Lord of the Rings so many times, but I haven't read it in about 5 years. So it's been glorious to reread this series. I am just having the absolute best time falling back in love with these characters and the way that Tolkien writes. I just love to get lost in another world. It's like one of my favorite things about fantasy, and like epic fantasy specifically, where you can just immerse yourself in someone else's world. It's the same with the Wheel of Time. It's why I like the Wheel of Time so much, is because this world is just huge and unimaginable, and you can just spend days of your life just traversing Middle Earth or elsewhere. And it just, I don't know, brings me so much joy to read these books. Again, I said this 20 minutes ago, but if you haven't read the books and you love the movies, you will absolutely love the books. He just has such a way of like almost lyrical like prose, and you just kind of find yourself getting absorbed in these sentences. The one addition that I had this year while reading it is I've also been reading the Prose Edda, which is like the basically one translation of what documented Norse tales we have. That's an oversimplification, but that's essentially what it is. And if you don't know, Tolkien was a linguist, and he specifically worked in Norse folklore. And so his taking of those things and working them throughout the book, it's like putting a puzzle together in your brain. I think that everybody, if you have a favorite author, you should find what their inspirations were and read them, because it's just like connecting dots that you didn't even know were there. And it's like you get this secret kind of behind the curtain look into maybe how their mind was thinking about it. I feel very similarly. Like, I love Red Rising. I've recently read The Count of Monte Cristo. I've obviously read Dune many times over. But like connecting all of those things to new stories, I think is just like one of the beautiful things about writing and reading. Tolkien like very famously said like there's no I can't remember the exact quote, but it's basically like there's no new writing. You just take everything that you love and put it in a jar and shake it up, and what spills out is your work. And reading like Norse mythology and some of the history of like Vikings and their beliefs. I'm also reading a nonfiction called The Children of Ash and Elm, which dives into their beliefs and mythology quite a bit, like alongside The Lord of the Rings, has just given me like this brand new appreciation for the series, and it's just deepened the thing I love so much. So that was an intense ramble, but really the TLDR is I love Lord of the Rings and you should read it too. That's it. Ellie thinks so too. Following the trend here of reading something really cozy and then reading something really not cozy, we have The Once and Future Me by Melissa Pace. This is Melissa Pace's debut novel, and I absolutely loved this book. We follow our main character as she wakes up on a bus headed to an insane asylum. She doesn't know what year it is. She doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know anything about the world that she has woken up in. And after she gets admitted into this insane asylum in the 1950s, she starts having these like flashbacks to the future. And everyone in her life is trying to convince her that that is her mental illness. But the people in her future / maybe hallucinations are trying to convince her that she is in 1954 to save the world. And that's kind of all I want to give away about the plot because it just unfolds really well. But I absolutely loved this book. One, shout out to Melissa Pace for writing and having a debut novel at 60 years old. Like, that is amazing. I think this book for me really highlighted like why I would love more older authors to debut novels, because like the writing was so much more elevated than I expected it to be for a debut. It was so much more polished. The language choice was so specific. Like her use of language is really important in this book because of the timelines, or maybe not timelines. So I just really appreciated like that she's clearly an experienced writer, and clearly has been writing for a very long time, maybe as a hobby, and finally like took the plunge to publish a book, because I'm so thankful that this book exists. So if you are out there and think that it is too late to write a book or publish a book, it is definitely not. I love that people of all ages are publishing brand new works. I just think that's so cool, and what a great gift this is as a debut novel. This deals very heavily with insane asylums and how women were treated, how women are believed. And it really goes into like what it was like for women being institutionalized in the 50s. And it just, I don't know, I love books that make me want to research a topic. That's like one of my favorite things, is when I can get like immersed in a fictional story that really drives me to like research more about a topic. And despite having a lot of family experience with mental institutions, this kind of still drove me to do some research about like how much of it was true, right? Like how much of what's in this book was real things that they used to do to people. And it was quite interesting what's unveiled. Again, I don't want to go too much into it because I think that you should read it and I don't want to give away the plot. But there's a lot to do with electric shock therapy, which, interestingly enough, electric shock therapy has come quite a long way. I didn't realize that like it was still used very regularly. Very famously, Carrie Fisher it went through electric shock therapy and was like a very large advocate for it her whole life as like a treatment for her bipolar, and did like monthly treatments regularly. And I had no idea. So I thought that was fascinating, like really digging into electric shock therapy as a topic because of how it is portrayed in media and how it was used, honestly, in the early 50s, specifically against women and mentally unwell people. It was a fascinating research topic for me. So I could ramble about this book all day. Like, clearly I really liked it. I thought the pacing was fun. I really liked the main character. I liked that we didn't know like what was going on. It ticks a lot of boxes for me for this book. So definitely recommend. It's not super scary. The only thing that I would say is that if you have any experience with mental hospitals, that is a big part of this book. So again, just check your trigger warnings and be kind and caring to yourself. I don't know why my lighting just changed. Let's see if that helps. Nothing. I don't know what's going on. Am I making my shadows more extreme? All right. Well, we'll figure that out later. I think it's because this book is bright yellow. There we go. All right. Next up, we have Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinninman. I am late to the game. Oh boy, was this so much fun. This is what I ended November on, again, following my trend of serious book, fun book. Highly recommend, by the way, if you want to read more heavy topics, maybe, just like alternate every other, have a palate cleanser book. Palate cleanser. So I started reading this series because my husband started reading it, and he thought that I would really enjoy it. I do love sci-fi. I love role-playing games. I'm a big tabletop game person. So this was kind of just like, again, kind of made for my brain. This is about Carl, who he and his cat, Princess Donut, end up in a end up in a dungeon crawler live game that's being hosted intergalactically by a corporation that has taken back the rights to Earth. And they have to clear levels in order to survive, basically. And no human has ever made it past level 13. And there are 18 levels. And so in order to survive, if you're the only person who makes it to the end, then you earn the rights back to the planet. And this was just... It's so much fun. I love, especially if you're a video game fan or if you're a Dungeons and Dragons fan. It's just so much fun. The characters are fantastic. The dialogue is so much fun. I never thought that a cat was going to be, I guess there's actually more than one cat that's like my favorite character in a book, especially if you've read Starter Villain. But I didn't think there would be multiple books where the cats are my favorite characters. And this one, Princess Donut, just like takes the cake. There's 10,000 videos about this book already out there in the world because it's very popular right now. So I don't necessarily need to get too much into it other than it is worth the hype. It's a fast read. It's fun. It's funny. It tells a good story. There still is some theme. Like I love when a book can be like fun and fast paced and funny, but still have good theme. And I feel like this one does. So if you haven't picked this up yet because you're like not sure if it's really worth all the hype, I would be the first one to tell you if it wasn't. And I can say absolutely it is. Don't go into it expecting that you're going to get like this Pulitzer worthy literary fiction. That's not what this is trying to be. This is trying to be a fun world with a commentary on capitalism and capitalism exploitation is an intergalactic problem. That's obviously an assumed theme. I don't think Matt Dinninman has said that, but that's what I got. If that's not the point, then I don't know, because my entire thought process reading this book is just like, oh, capitalism is just bad even in space. Cool. So there you have it. That is all of the books I read in October and November. I am a handful of books already into December. Maybe not a handful. I don't know. I've read a few books already in December. I'm actually going to put this back up so it fixes my lighting again. It's been a really good month. I'm excited next month to talk about the Count of Monte Cristo because that has been a wild journey. I've absolutely loved reading it, and I think it's going to be a fun one to talk about. So make sure that you are subscribed and follow along so that you can stay tuned for that one. I will also have at least 2 more of these books to talk about. And another Lord of the Rings is on the docket, and probably another horror book will be thrown in there. It might be The Eyes Are the Best Part. That's the one I'm leaning towards. However, I also just did get Itch in my Aardvark box this month, so that's also competing for my next available TBR slot. The other one that's really high on my list is Local Heavens, which is a cyberpunk reimagining of The Great Gatsby. Like a futuristic cyberpunk reimagining of The Great Gatsby. And that sounds so cool. I also have a couple arcs to read. So December and January are going to be really fun months for me. So definitely make sure you're following along. If this was too much talking for you, I also do much shorter videos on TikTok and Instagram where you can find those links in my bio. I would love to know in a comment what you guys read last month and what you're gonna read next month. Intros are weird. Nope, this is an outro. That's it. Have a good night, everybody.